There was a time when stock car racing was kind of a neighborhood affair here in the American South, but those days are gone forever. On this chilly winter afternoon, the temperature is still trying to get up as high as 50 degrees. More than 90,000 people have gathered at the Daytona International Speedway. They've come to see the 9th renewal of the famous Daytona 500. There's a field of 50 great automobiles here this afternoon, and among the top contenders should be the Ford Fairlanes, the Plymouths, the Dodges, and a lonely Chevelle, which somehow managed to win the pole position. Working with us again is going to be our colleague, the editor of National Speed Sport News, Chris Economaki. This is the second richest automobile race in the world at this point, more than $200,000 in prize money. Right now, let's take a look at some of the automobiles that are going to be on the first 2 or 3 rows as they start out. Now, on the pole is going to be Curtis Turner. That's car number 13 on the top of your screen, the Chevelle. He qualified at more than 180 miles an hour, and that's Curtis, a big man, having a little trouble just easing himself into that driving compartment. Right alongside him will be the only man who's ever won this race twice. That is Richard Petty, kind of an idol in this sport. Richard's familiar, number 43, and that shade will be taken off the windshield. That's been just trying to keep the sun on, so it won't be too hot inside that compartment. 67 Plymouth. Now the second row, and nearest to you is the car of Freddie Lorenzen, but alongside him in car number 12 is going to be Leroy Yarborough. Leroy in a 67 Dodge Charger, and there's a good look at that car as he tapes a little something up to keep the sun out during the race. Freddie Lorenzen in car number 28 is a former winner in 1965. Then we go back to the next row, and nearest to you in car number 26 is going to be Darrell Dieringer. Car number 27 is that of the 2-time Indianapolis winner, A.J. Foyt. And there is A.J. inside his car, just making a last-minute adjustment to his crash helmet before moving out on the track. Quite a number of 67 Fairlanes here. The last 2 cars that you saw were both that. And here's a look at Darrell Dieringer, the current champion of the Southern 500, the famous race at Darlington. This is Curtis Turner. Came back last year after a 5-year suspension, and he's really moving. The ex-carpenter from Elmhurst, Illinois, Freddie Lorenzen, as we said, he won here in 65. And this is the current NASCAR National Point Standings champion, David Pearson. David will be right in there, although he's back around the 4th or 5th row of starters when the race gets underway. And here is Mario Andretti, for the past 2 years, the USAC Big Car National Champion. We asked Mario how big a change it is from the big racing cars to the stocks.
Well, as far as my experience, this is my 3rd race here at Daytona, and last 4th of July during the Firecracker 400, I thought I became pretty accustomed to the drafting because I was among the leaders, and I think I learned an awful lot of things that I hope will help me during the 500 here.
That was Mario Andretti's comment before he got in the automobile, but he's in it now, as are they all, moving out onto the track. Always one of the most exciting moments in sport. Pace car moving out and leading this field of 50 automobiles. Chris, the weather sure should be pretty good for racing today, shouldn't it?
Excellent, Jim. The temperatures, though not so good for the spectators, are great on the machinery.
And here is a now familiar sight, the raising of the balloons going up into the sky. We see it just about every place nowadays.
From Indianapolis to Le Mans, Jim.
That's right. Cars getting in line now. Once they decide that they're in the proper order and ready to go, that green flag will be dropped. Moving around fairly slowly at this point on the 2.5-mile tri-oval track, fastest in the world, they call it. And remember, speeds today should be in excess of 180 miles an hour. Almost unbelievable. The flag is in the air. There they go. And Curtis Turner goes for the lead just that quickly. Curtis has always been a charger. In that Chevelle today, he has quickly taken the lead as they head into the first turn. There you see him. Oh, a good 50 yards out in front already. That's Richard Petty in second place up high, and right along with him is Leroy Yarborough. The whole field very closely bunched at this point. We'll try to sort them out as they begin to drop down into their position. The one position that is definite at this moment is first place, and that's Curtis Turner. He has always liked to do that, though, hasn't he, Chris?
He drives with his foot to the floor, and that's what he said he's going to do today. Incidentally, Jim, the experts say that never before have so many drivers been capable of winning. 15 or 20 can win this race today.
Well, certainly those first 3 are real close right now, and then you see 2 more cars in back of them. Curtis Turner, the leader, and fighting for second place, Leroy Yarborough and Richard Petty. And moving closer to him right now, Richard Petty is on the high side, and moving into second place is Leroy. Look at that.
Close going in there, and very, very treacherous, Jim.
Buddy Baker in 4th place, trying to get in contention there in car number 3. Turner's lead shrinking all the while now, and Richard Petty's going to try to take the lead from him, it looks like. Bursting out of that turn and on the backstretch. There they go. They're at 190 right now. There's the first car out of the race, a fellow called Cuckoo Marlin, if you believe that name. He's out of it now, however. And bursting through and taking the lead is Leroy Yarborough. Went right past those first two cars.
Leroy's an experienced drafter, Jim, and he really made it work for him in that instance.
So Yarborough takes the lead in the early going. We'll be back in a minute on ABC's Wide World of Sports. This is Jim McKay. At Daytona, we've already had caution flags and several lead changes in this race. For the last few laps, an Indianapolis driver has taken over, and there he is in number 11. We're back at Daytona, and the battle goes on. The leader is still Mario Andretti, but we have to say more about that. Mario Andretti did not pit under the yellow flag when all of the other leaders did, so he could be in kind of a bad situation, although he's still in first place, right, Chris?
Well, he's going to have to stop. There's no question about that. Why he didn't is puzzling everyone, and probably his pit crew more than anyone.
We're timing a lap on him right now as he heads for the finish line here. It's going to be 50 seconds flat, and that's an easy one to translate. It's 180 miles an hour on the nose.
Right on the nose. Remarkable speed.
Mario Andretti, the leader. By the way, another remarkable feature coming up on Wide World later this afternoon. Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain is going to have a most remarkable conversation, complete, we understand, with a little bit of sparring with Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world. Stand by for that, and look at this race.
Darrell Derringer's moved into second place for a moment there. Paul Goldsmith has gotten him back as they head down that long back straightaway.
That's right, it's Andretti without the pit stop yet, remember, still in the lead. Paul Goldsmith in car number 99 is second. And then Darrell Derringer trying to move up into third place in car number 26. He was well back for a while. You see this a small group up in the lead and then another group of 8 or 9 cars that could still easily challenge.
Andretti's setting a brisk pace, and that car his seems to work anywhere on the track, down low, in the middle, and up high.
There they go, headed for the turn yet again on the high banking here at Daytona. Buddy Baker in third position now, moving up on Goldsmith. Andretti's still the leader. Goldsmith right on the rear bumper of Mario Andretti. And there's Buddy Baker.
He's making it interesting.
Just about side by side on the banking. And look out for Goldsmith. There he goes. The tail of his car began to fishtail wobble, and then you saw him going up to the rail, down into the infield, and miraculously no other cars ran into him.
Jim, that's a classic example of what the outside forces do to a car on this track. Baker went around Goldsmith high and on the outside and upset the draft, and the turbulence he created sent the car into a spin. Now Goldsmith is on his way to the pit.
Still in the race, however, apparently, as they all begin to pit under the yellow flag, and here is the big break for Mario Andretti.
Boy, and did he need it, because it's past the 100-mile mark, and he's only supposed to get 90 miles out of a tank full.
But he got past 100 miles, didn't run out of gas, got in here under the yellow flag, and it should not cost him anything at all. He also might be able to take one less pit stop than the other cars, and that could be vitally important in this automobile race. We talked to Freddie Lorenzen before the race began about a subject he is very much an expert in, the subject of drafting. We asked him as briefly as possible, what's it all about?
Well, it's mainly conserving fuel. It conserves tire wear. And the way you start on drafting it, there's 2 sections to a car. The car has to go through the wind. It has to push the wind away from the grill, and then there's a swirl in the back of the car that slows the car down in the back. So if you get another car coming up on a car, that wind that's usually going over the front car surpasses the back of the first car and goes to the top of the second car, which gives it a pulling forward power.
That was Freddie Lorenzen before the race on the subject of drafting. The car is continuing to go back out on the track after this pit stop, and there goes the fellow who is in the lead, Mario Andretti. We'll see whether or not he keeps that lead when they all get sorted out once again. There goes the green flag. And there is Cale Yarborough. Looks like he's out of the race.
That's right, Jim. He dove down off the turn to miss Goldsmith, and then when he hit the bottom, the front suspension units broke on his Ford Fairlane.
A tough break for Cale, who is moving up in the pack very expertly. Well, in the lead after the pit stop is not Mario Andretti, but Buddy Baker in car number 3, a Dodge Charger. Right
Darrell
along
Derringer.
behind him, right, I was going to say, Darrell Derringer is car number 26. And here he comes. And don't worry, Andretti and all the rest are not far behind. They're just out of view of your picture. And here's another spin.
That's Don White.
That is Don White of Keokuk, Iowa. And once again, nobody hit him as he came down to the infield. Looks like he's going to be okay. But the yellow flag is out, and he may have left a lot of stuff up there on the banking.
All that smoke we saw, Jim, was actually his tires smoking. He locked up the brakes when he got into trouble, and it looked for a moment like the engine blew, but actually it's tires burning on the way to the wall.
And there's another car sliding down into the infield, car number 4. That's John Sears. He apparently hit some debris or some oil or something up there.
There's a lot of litter out there, Jim, right now.
It takes these cars a little while to slow down from the speed of 180 miles an hour, I suppose.
That's right. And see the skid marks up there. It's a wild ride these fellows have taken.
Yellow flag out again in one of the most frantic of all Daytona 500s. And here comes somebody else. Looks like Ramos Stott this time.
And Dick Hutcherson in the number 29, Jim. He hit the wall, a rather solid hit.
Well, now, talk about your coincidences. We've had 3 fellows spin down in this infield in the last minute, and all 3 of them register out of Keokuk, Iowa.
A bad day for the Hawkeyes.
That's exactly right. We'll be coming back here in just a minute at the Daytona 500. The green flag is out again at the Daytona International Speedway in one of the wildest of them all. A chilly afternoon, but the action and the actual temperature under those tires on the track just as hot as it could possibly be. The lead has changed hands, almost a dozen times, and we're still in the comparatively early going. And look at it right now. That's Tiny Lund on the high side on the banking. And down on the low side is Curtis Turner, who led early in this race, has now come back from about 9th or 10th place to challenge for the lead once again. And David Pearson now moving up from 3rd position into this 3-way battle for the lead. But look at this. Mario Andretti, who led earlier, burst past these other 3 cars, well over 180 miles an hour. Those other 3 only going about 175. Looked like they were standing still. That's the kind of an afternoon it is here. And of course, we'll be returning for the conclusion of this most exciting race. Right now, it's time for man racing against man. Dave Patrick and Jim Ryan, among others. We're going to move to Como Hall in Detroit, the NCAA Track and Field Championships, and Kurt Gowdy. Thank you, Howard. We're back at Daytona, and there is the car in the lead, number 11, Mario Andretti, the USAC Indianapolis-type car champion, to come here to challenge the great stock car drivers and challenge them successfully so far. But it's a tremendous battle. Right with him is David Pearson, who is the NASCAR national champion of last year, and David right now is taking the lead from Mario Andretti. Chris Economaki is still with me, and this has been something, hasn't it?
It's been a seesaw race all the way, and a phenomenal one. So many cars up front, and Pearson the champion just in front of Andretti now.
And in 3rd position, and just a matter of yards behind them, is Fred Lorenzen, the fellow who won this race in 1965. A couple of years before that, he was the first man ever to win more than $100,000 in purse money in stock car racing in 1 year. So these are definitely 3 of the great drivers of the world battling it out at Daytona. A 500-mile race. We've seen the lead change hands many times. Some of the top drivers who have dropped out were A.J. Foyt and Curtis Turner, who held the lead for quite a number of laps here, and so many others.
Leroy Yarborough also has dropped out, Jim, and the only foreign driver in the race, Innes Ireland, he's out of it too, all with engine trouble. It's been tough on the metal today.
The weather is ideal for driving, as a matter of fact, though. The temperature cool, around 50 degrees here in Daytona. These 3 great cars battling it out. A little smoke from Andretti there. You think there could be trouble?
Oh, I wonder now. This is the first display of smoke we've seen, and he may have problems. Let's hope not.
Stopped immediately, though.
It's a down-to-the-wire race, foot to the floor, and Fred Lorenzen said before the race that he was geared for drafting, and he's got to ride behind people. He can't afford to take the lead, but he's certainly trying for 2nd here.
He sure is. Apparently, he'd like to get out of that draft from Andretti and catch a little draft from the leader, David Pearson, and hang on to him for a while. This has been a classic Fred Lorenzen-type race up to this point, hasn't it?
All the way, and if Lorenzen can hang on right here, he'll make his move coming off the last turn of the last lap.
Quick reminder here that next week, ABC's Wide World of Sports will be in Vail, Colorado, coming to you in color with the World Series of Skiing. There's another car that's going to be out of it right now. This is Bobby Isaac in car number 71. He's had it for the afternoon.
Yes, he has. He's had a tough season.
World Series of Skiing from Vail, Colorado, with France, Austria, the United States, Canada, and Germany all going, in Switzerland. We're going to see Jean-Claude Killy, one of the most famous athletes in the world today. Mario Guachel, the great French girl, our American skiers. But right now, this race, and there goes Andretti again.
There's been many, many changes to the lead, Jim. It may even set a record. Over 20 changes to the lead so far.
And now Mario definitely has the lead again, but look at Lorenzen hanging there right with him, and dropping way back suddenly is David Pearson.
He's in trouble, Jim.
He's had it. Look at that. Smoke pouring from the engine of his car, a blown engine, and quite possibly a lot of debris being scattered on that track.
Undoubtedly, he oiled up part of the track.
David Pearson, who drove a great race, is now out of it. It's a two-car race between Mario Andretti and Fred Lorenzen, and we'll be back in just a minute. With the yellow flag out, the leaders have made a pit stop here at Daytona, and the lead has changed hands. Fred Lorenzen's pit stop was just a little bit faster than Mario Andretti's, and there you see him in front of Mario with the yellow flag still out by a couple of yards. The interesting point, however, will be to see if Andretti still has the tremendous speed he's had all afternoon and will be able to burst in front of Lorenzen almost at will. Now, there's the green flag. There he goes. He's still got it, Chris.
He certainly has. The car is performing beautifully, Jim. And with Pearson out, that's moved Tiny Lund into third place, and Jim Hilton into fourth, and sports car driver Jerry Grant into fifth place in the race now.
And look at Mario Andretti streaking away from Fred Lorenzen. There are the standings.
Well, that's where the drafting gear cost Lorenzen. He didn't just have the acceleration that Andretti did, and Andretti has pulled away for the first time really today.
I think we mentioned earlier, but we might reiterate at that, Chris, that Mario Andretti's car is set up an entirely different way than the other cars here.
A radically different way. He had it set up very loose. His mechanics wondered whether this was advisable, but he demanded it. It's set up loose so that it'll wander a little bit on the track, and he's made it wander right into the lead.
A very solid lead right now, and we see that Tiny Lund is trying to unlap himself. He's one lap behind. If he could get on the same lap, and then there would be a caution flag, he could close up and conceivably still win this race.
That's right.
Mario Andretti, however, is still the leader. He's one lap ahead of that car right alongside of him right now. Before today's race, we asked
Actually, for
Mario
yourself here during the race, if you're all alone, you're struggling. You're struggling very hard. It's so much easier in equipment and everything else that if you can just hang on to somebody. Actually, the man that's leading this race, he's the one that's struggling. The one right behind, he can just sit there with all kinds of confidence. Because this is one place where you have much more control of the situation from behind, directly behind, than you do by leading.
Mario Andretti commenting before the race on the difficulties of being the leader. Right now, however, it doesn't look too difficult as he wings out in front of the field at speeds of over 180 miles an hour here at Daytona. And right now, Fred Lorenzen, who's second, has a problem. There's Paul Goldsmith in the back of the pits and out of the race, car number 99. It's hard to say that Lorenzen has a problem. He is drafting on Tiny Lund, but Tiny Lund, who is more than a lap behind, is not going as fast as Andretti, so the draft isn't going to help him very much.
That's right, and he can't do it alone. Incidentally, Darrell Derringer, one of the early contenders, is in trouble. He's making repeated stops at the pits for a right front tire change. Something apparently is wrong with the car, rubbing on the tire, and it's putting him back.
You saw our clock superimpose 50.4. That is still a very fast lap time for Mario Andretti, just under 178 miles an hour. Again, we saw the smoke coming out of his car, but again, it was just on that first turn. It seems to be at the same spot on the track each time, Chris.
That's right, but it hasn't affected his lap times at all, Jim, and with the race drawing rapidly to a close, it looks like he might make it.
And there graphically, you see Fred Lorenzen's problem in car number 28, drafting beautifully on Tiny Lund, but losing time. Let's take an interval timing here. Here is Andretti coming to the finish line. We'll start the clock right now as he crosses the finish line and see how many seconds behind him Lorenzen in the white car there is. There he is behind Tiny Lund. All right, he's 10.3 seconds behind the leader. The next time they come around to the finish line, we'll get that interval again and see if Lorenzen, in fact, is gaining or losing.
That, incidentally, Jim, is the widest margin any leader has held since the green flag wave this afternoon.
By a long shot. It's been more like 10 inches most of the time, 10 seconds.
Well, the third-place car, Tiny Lund, right in front of the second-place machine here. A good ways back behind Mario Andretti, the Nazareth, Pennsylvania USAC champion, setting a tremendous pace, 180-mile-an-hour racing throughout most of the afternoon when the green flag is out.
No driver, not a member of NASCAR, has ever won this race, I don't think. Chris, but this could be the first one today. Let's catch this interval again. Okay, now we see the difference. And here comes Lorenzen again. Remember, it was 10.3 seconds the last time. It's going to be more. 11.5, so he's losing more than a second a lap at this point. We'll be back in just a moment at the Daytona 500 on Wide World of Sports. The situation at Daytona continues to go in favor of Mario Andretti. The young man, born in Italy, came to the United States at the age of about 14, now registers out of Nazareth, Pennsylvania, and for the past 2 years has been the USAC, or Big Indianapolis car type of champion. There is the second place car at the moment. Fred Lorenzen in car number 28 is almost half a track behind, about 22 to 23 seconds. All Andretti has to do is finish now.
That's right. He's a little fella, too, only 5'4" and about 130 pounds, and he's been manhandling this big 4,000-pound Ford Fairlane like he was a giant.
Kind of interesting things going on in the racing world these days. Again, a puff of smoke on the first turn, but it sure isn't bothering that car at all. We have seen sports car drivers, or actually Formula One Grand Prix drivers, the past 2 years winning at Indianapolis, now an Indianapolis driver, quite possibly winning here at Daytona. That was Richard Petty going into the pits, and apparently he dropped some oil because there is Jerry Grant in car number 40 spinning on something, and here comes another one.
That's Jim Hurtubise, Jim, and that one Plymouth oiled the track up for the other two Plymouths right behind. Tough break for Richard Petty, who's had a rough day all afternoon.
And here we have the white flag, meaning 1 lap to go for the leader, and the caution flag, the yellow one going out at the same time. Tiny Lund has run out of gas with 1 lap to go. That's going to drop him back. He was doing very well. We'll get the final standings here very shortly. First, let's get a winner. Mario Andretti ready to take the checkered flag, and there it is.
He made it.
Mario Andretti has won the 1967 Daytona 500. He's won it with an average speed of 146.9 miles per hour. However, that's deceiving because there were 9 yellow flags today. Had it not been for that, the average speed could have been well up in the 170s, I should think.
Well, Jim, when they were running it, never dropped below 177. Never once, and many times it was over 180.
Second place in the race goes to Fred Lorenzen. Third place to James Hilton, despite that spin there near the end. Fourth place to Tiny Lund, and then fifth was Jerry Grant. Sixth was Darrell Dieringer. Andretti in a Ford, Lorenzen also in a Ford Fairlane, Hilton in a Dodge, then 2 Plymouths, and then another Fairlane. 18 cars out of 50 is all that finished, and that was the story at Daytona. The executive producer of ABC's Wide World of Sports is Roone Arledge. The NCAA Indoor Track and Field Championships produced by Chet Forte and directed by Andy Sedaris. Daytona 500 produced for ABC by Dick Kirchner and directed by Mac Hemian. Clay Chamberlain segment produced by Jim Spence and directed by Lou Volpicelli. Our associate directors, Ronald Hawkins, Larry Cam, Dick Pittenger, and Doug Wilson. Technical directors, Bill Morris and Vern Hendrickson. Remember, next week on ABC's Wide World of Sports in color, the World Series of Skiing from Vail, Colorado. We'll have all the great skiers of the world on hand, standings counting for the World Cup. You'll have Jean-Claude Killy, of course, from France, Mario Guachel, our fine young Americans, Nancy Green of Canada. Today's program originated live and on videotape from Detroit, Daytona Beach, and New York City.